It's really important to see the assets. It's also really important to meet the team and learn a little bit more about the culture. So is this a proactive team? Is this a team who really just runs things to failure? Because that, again, has an impact on the business objective.
Welcome to the Trend Detection Podcast, powered by Siemens. And now your host, Niall Sullivan.
Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of the Trend Detection Podcast. I'm really pleased to be joined once again by my colleague Tom, who's fast becoming one of our most regular guests. So welcome back, Tom.
Hello, Niall.
Good to see you and hear you again. And today we're talking about a slightly different topic, I guess, because we talk about a lot about predictive maintenance, of course, and the details of the project, but we don't often talk about how, the start of a project and actually getting a predictive maintenance project up and running. So that's what we're going to cover today. But maybe, Tom, just for those who maybe haven't listened to you on the podcast before, maybe just a quick intro from your side. That'd be great.
Absolutely, yeah. So my name's Tom. My job is solutions engineering for Senseye Predictive Maintenance within Siemens. The real role is to try and understand customer problems, mainly with a focus on, anything to do with downtime avoidance, prevention of certain mechanical component failures and so on, and really bring this forward to a full-scale project and really understand how we can help customers. That's what I'm here for.
Fantastic. So the perfect person to interview on this topic then. Okay. So let's just start, first of all, by taking sort of a broader look at things. So we know that predictive maintenance, and you'll know because you've been to so many customers about the predictive maintenance topic, it's getting so much traction. I mean, from your point of view, Tom, why predictive maintenance in particular? Why is that so in demand at the moment?
This is a great question. Yeah. So at the moment, we're kind of in a new phase, I would call it, of digitalization, where things like sensors start to become cheaper. The ability to monitor a fully mechanical system or even a electromechanical system is getting easier. And also the monitoring process, the likes of Senseye now coming to the forefront with AI and lots of other features. It's becoming cost effective and simply enough, as in a plug and play solution, for want of a better word at this stage, to make it work, to pull data from a system, understand how to improve maintenance, make it work for you. And I think that rise of scalability, that rise of affordability, with the intelligence in the background to make smart decisions, it's really now a reality. And we've got customers who've been doing this for 5-10 years, but we've got lots of customers recently really coming to the forefront asking us how we can help them.
And do you see a shift in sort of mindset away from thinking of predictive maintenance initiative as like a cost on a spreadsheet to an actual investment, like you say, to save money and increase productivity, for example?
It definitely is. So you see it as an outgoing, of course. It costs something to install the system, to get it up and running, to connect all the different components, set sensitivities of sensors and so on, and also to pull some context in so we can understand what the motors, the pumps, the gearboxes, also non-rotating assets, so things like hydraulic systems or coolers, understand what they're doing. Really, what you need to look at is how does that have a business impact? So where does downtime cost you money? Where does over-maintenance cost you money? And sometimes companies don't have an oversight of those things. So it just looks like an outgoing. And also part of my role is to help understand how that's not the case and really how predictive maintenance can have a really positive impact.
So actually, I guess that leads on nicely to this question about, if predictive maintenance is actually right for an organisation, because I guess there's many factors to consider. So, what are those factors, Tom, from your point of view?
I think start with a business problem. So not really the technology, really identify high impact areas. So look to assess major losses when they fail, look to see how leadership buy-in and stakeholders are going to look at this, how the IT team looks at cybersecurity topics, can we allow data to flow to the cloud? We're seeing more and more customers allowing that to be the case. So we see a positive approach to this. We see an open-mindedness towards digitalization, digital transformation definitely taking place. And then just how do we access the data? So some of the key factors are, have we got the data? Have we got the sensors that we're going to need? And if the customers that we speak to don't have that, that's a part of the scope work that I do. So we can try and build a process, get customers to that stage of, connectivity, pull that data into one central location. And of course, we get loads of customers that don't have these things in place. And because there's suddenly a requirement, which there wasn't before, to centralize data, pull it together in some form, that's all part of the project. So we talk about, why is it hard to start a project or how to start a project? That's what I'm here for. That's also what my team is here for. So we all work together to make sense of it. What's the objective? And what are the building blocks we've currently got? And what are the things that we currently lack? So that method to cloud that we might not have in place, or the person who's going to react to those alerts from Senseye, for example.
And I guess another thing like you and colleagues have to consider as well is you must face a lot of misconceptions from customers, and in a way you can't blame people because I know coming from a marketing perspective the amount of tools and products out there saying they do this or that, some doing PDM and not doing it, and it's a very confusing market out there. So I guess that leads to a lot of misunderstandings and misconceptions.
I think you're right, Noel, and we've seen it. I know you've seen this as well, where we get the wrong sort of requests. It ends up becoming a condition monitoring topic. And PDM, for a start, is much broader than that. It's about really intelligent, smart decision making. So the system's able to not only detect that you've crossed over a certain threshold, but also tell you more or less what's going wrong on a broad level with a good understanding of the application and the context of the asset, with its own general intelligence, plus the knowledge of PDF documents and so on, and give you decision making. So I think some of the misconceptions are, it's basically what we saw 10 years ago. We can add some sensors, we can see when we cross a threshold, but it's so much more than that. And it's very easy when you look at the interface of Senseye. I've seen something like this 10 years ago. I heard that from a customer at Hannover Messe not long ago. And you have to try and explain that in the background, there's a lot more intelligence than there was in the past. The ability to determine baseline of an asset very, very quickly without models. And I think when it comes to misconceptions, it can be, okay, we just plug it in and it all just works, is another one. And I would still say it's plug and play with a little bit of context and understanding of, which sensors do we need, which context data do we need, so that we have that understanding of this particular motor or this particular hoist or cooling system. And we can build that into the software. So as soon as that's in place, which is, I'd still call it plug and play with a little bit of an extra piece of delivery work, then you get the full-fledged predictive maintenance. And I think people often think it's expensive and it's not going to pay for itself. And what's the value? And a big part of it has to be that business understanding. What's the objective we're trying to solve? And see perhaps case studies from past, how we've done this with previous customers. And really the proof is in the pudding. We've done this before.
And actually, to your latter point, focusing on, because a lot of those points around, is too expensive and when will I see a return on investment? It's actually a lot of the time is focusing on the technology aspect of it and not the business outcomes, which you mentioned before, right? So that's part of going, do I need this technology, rather than saying what business problem am I trying to solve? I guess that could be a way to look at it.
It can be one of the first areas that we look to address, because if the business objective is wrong or somehow it's not going to align, we can't achieve this certain component, but we can achieve these other areas that you haven't considered. It's making sure we get on the same page as quickly as possible as to what's achievable, where the big wins are going to come from. Exactly to your point. It's really important to get the business objective in place when we start.
And I guess to another point you made about, often being compared to condition monitoring, is there a reason why condition monitoring is often confused with predictive maintenance?
I'd say so. The reason is because it's been taking place for, I'd say, at least 10, maybe even 20 years at the scale it is at the moment, where you have maybe some IoT sensors, you bolt them on. There's certain thresholds, maybe there's some basic level intelligence in there, That to me is condition monitoring. You're monitoring that sort of condition of the asset. Predictive maintenance then becomes, how do we then make sense of that information? The software within Senseye is able to really enhance that and give you, digital support, give you AI-driven decision making. And sometimes it sounds too good to be true, but the more you feed into the software in terms of how you fix problems, how you've solved things, the work that you've done to grease a bearing or do certain work is saved and used as future decision support. And that's a really fundamental difference to how predictive maintenance works. Long term, I think we'll see more and more customers start to understand that. The transition I've already seen at things like the exhibitions we go to, it's quite significant, especially in the last 12 months. The impact it seems to have had, great job from the marketing team, I definitely would say that, where we've got more customers understanding what we are, what we can do, and what we bring to the table, in a way that far outclasses the typical condition monitoring as it was all those years ago.
Yeah, well, thank you for the compliment, first of all, Tom. But
no problem.
Yeah, but I think also the market, the market's ever changing as well. But yeah, there certainly is that sort of confusion in the market. I mean, I've spoken to a few industry analysts recently, and again, that's the common. When end users approach them, it's always about what's the differentiator between X product and X product, and I think. Yeah, and I think and it leads back to that point about, is predictive maintenance the right fit for your organisation? But if you don't understand what predictive maintenance is because of all this confusion, then it's difficult to get started, right? If that makes sense.
It does make sense. And it's good to see that analysts in the industry are seeing the same. And I think just to really reiterate it, in the last 12 months, it's really significant. How many people now know what it is? They see what it can do. I think the fact that AI has become a really big buzzword in different circles. It's in the news quite a lot. It gives you more of an understanding of what's actually achievable in an industrial space. And maintenance, it's always going to be there until we remove friction from a process. We're always going to have degrading belts, sprockets, chains, bearings, you name it. All of these things will always need to be maintained. And it's really important that your process there to do that maintenance, I would say nowadays, especially in 2025, is digitally driven rather than coming from an old catalog or from an old PDF document that's got a structured process. And every 6 months we do this and this maintenance in a preventative way. We really now move towards, AI-driven decision making, which is forward thinking. It's based on the past. Decisions are then extremely intelligent compared to the past. I know we're going to come on to these topics, but this is how I see it massively.
No, exactly. And if we pull it back to the start of a predictive maintenance project, with all this in mind we've discussed so far, which I think feeds into this question. But what does sort of an ideal roadmap look like for a PDM project? I know there's some context around it. Different customers are all different, right? But if let's say a typical roadmap might look like.
Simple. It is to start small, prove the value, and then scale. And Senseye scales really, really well. It scales because it's got no models in the background, so it works. It learns baseline of any asset that we've never seen before very quickly. But the key to it is to start small and see that value for yourselves. And small to us typically is 50 assets. The reason that's small is because we look for a process that's enough data, enough machines, looking at enough things that could go wrong. Typically in a factory or any environments of maintenance, there's lots of things already being well maintained. There's good quality machinery, which doesn't typically fail. But when it does, it can be catastrophic, or you're having to really over-maintain stuff. So if we look at 50 things, it allows us to really show value on at least 2, 3, 4 of those across a 12-month period. And then you see the value. That gives us the ability to prove value. And I guess really that's my job. So we have to make sure we scope the right assets. We look at the right parameters. What sensors, what connectivity do we need? And we've got a whole team of people within Siemens that support this across any region of the world. We can make sure this happens. Also with partners that are well engaged with our customers. It allows us to really build a relationship and prove that first step, and then Really, build confidence, I think, is a key with that small scale start and then scale it from there.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because you use the phrase sort of small, start small, which small could mean also, in some eyes, let's start with this one really important machine we have here. So why is that not sort of a good starting point for predictive maintenance necessarily?
That's a good topic, Noel. Sometimes it becomes the machine is, worth €3 million or £3 million. You think, well, actually, this is something that we should monitor. But maybe there's a whip storage, there's a back and forth in the maintenance process where that machine is only switched on 2 days a week. You throw a few things through it, it does what it's supposed to do, stamping or pressing or something that's on a larger scale. And actually, if you were to stop it for a few days and run it back up again on a couple of other shifts, it doesn't really impact the process. So you have these big gaps to do maintenance that don't affect the process. Whereas somewhere else, you could have a small conveyor that's only €200. It's really crucial and it's a big bottleneck in the process. And actually, if that thing stops, you lose hours of production time or, depending on the criticality and depending on the output of what the product is, the impact could be huge, even though the asset we choose to monitor is fairly insignificant or fairly, cost effective. It's cheaper compared to the rest. So again, this comes back down to business objective. Do we look to extend the lifespan of the £1 million CNC machine, or likewise make sure we don't have a stoppage and a downtime on a smaller, less significant asset?
So I guess what we're saying is a really important part of this is asset selection. Is looking at business outcomes, looking at the right assets, to meet, to meet those business objectives. I guess that's the focus. It's not,
Absolutely, and it can make or break a project, because if you select the wrong assets and that business impact isn't seen for obviously whatever reason, like sometimes we see this. We see where a customer wants to monitor their biggest, most expensive asset, and that's the asset they would typically do lots of over maintenance on, even if Senseye is in place. And so after 12 months, it never broke down. It never was given the chance to fail or to get close to degrading for Senseye to show the impact. So yeah, no, absolutely. Asset selection is really, really important.
And I guess maybe just, for the audience information, like how do you go about working with the customer to select the right assets for a project, on a typical project?
What it comes down to is we understand each other. So we have interaction between each other to understand, how can we help? What are the problems? This could be online. And then it leads perhaps to an on-site meeting. And somewhere within this, it leads to a scope workshop, which is what we term as the chance to come and have a look at the machines, do a walk around. That could be around a mine, it could be around a steel factory, it could be around a chocolate factory or anything. It could be around literally any kind of processes that we're looking at. It goes without saying Senseye is a completely system and industry agnostic. So we look at anything, and the team, the solutions engineering team, have got lots of knowledge, lots of understanding of how mechanical systems fail, what to look out for, what questions to ask, what kind of data to look for. Make recommendations as well. If we need additional vibration sensing or some other monitoring, or we need some context from the PLC system, this all leads towards correct selection of assets. And once we do that, we continue to work together. It becomes a real collaboration. It's not like, here's a box of stuff, now off you go and plug it in. It's an ongoing continuation. Even when the alerts would raise from a newly onboarded asset, we work together with customers to make sure that's set correctly, to make sure that as the weeks and months go on, nuisance alerts don't happen, but also things don't get missed. So we decrease sensitivities of things. We can add additional logic if we need to through things like derived measures. This is really important because it means we lead to long-term success, and there's a relationship between us and the customers, also where partners are involved as well.
And just to pick up on a point, because you mentioned about sort of sensor selection and actually being on site, maybe even touching the asset or seeing the asset in person, but how important is that sort of physical visit to site, Tom, from your perspective?
It's really important. It's really important to see the asset. It's also really important to meet the team and learn a little bit more about the culture. So is this a proactive team? Is this a team who really just runs things to failure, because that again has an impact on the business objective. Is this thing working in a clean environment? Can we look to also strategically improve the way something is looked after? Is it being jet washed to keep it clean, but actually the incorrect IP ratings or housings are not in place? There's other things we can do to make suggestions and bring improvements. And to be clear, that's also that's done most often as a gesture of goodwill. So we try to do this in cases where where we can support customers and show that we're there to help, bring our knowledge to the table. We start a project together, and long term, hopefully customers choose to scale with Senseye.
No, absolutely, and scale is clearly the pathway that we're looking to be on that journey with the customer. But I guess thinking about what possible challenges there are and roadblocks that could derail some of these projects in some cases before they even really get going. But could you sort of explain some of the ones that you come across most of all, Tom?
One of the biggest ones is the team are really keen to start something, and we try and escalate this through the business, and we start to hit roadblocks, whether it's to do with cloud, which is starting to really disperse now. We're not seeing that so often these days. But one of the things is making sure that upper level CEOs and higher level management are on the same page, that this could all be explained. The business impact can be explained. The return of investment can be fully understood, rather than just, hey boss, we've got this big new solution to monitor all of our assets. Can we sign it off, please? If that is not explained properly and it's not described as to how this will have a business impact, that's a roadblock. That's a big roadblock. Also, where we start to see there's some sensors in place, but they might not be high enough quality. Again, that's a roadblock. And making sure the assets are, not being too maintained. We want to make sure that the things we're looking at are going to get a chance to degrade, and Senseye gets a chance to show the power of predictive maintenance, AI-based decision making. And I think culturally, we need to just make sure that the kind of customer that installs this has a vested interest to follow up on the alerts raised by Senseye. And sometimes we find customers who don't really understand it, and as soon as the alerts start to come and they see the benefits of interacting with the algorithm and filling in what they did to fix problems and remedy the situation, that's where the buy-in starts to come from, in a way that I personally have never seen in condition monitoring, but I see it now massively in the predictive maintenance space.
And of course, it's that thing that if like Senseye's raising alerts, but no one's taking action on them, then it's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. I guess is the right way to say it. It won't be successful if you're not taking the actions that Senseye's, pointing out to people, right?
Absolutely. And even with that, Noel, we get the case where alerts will get closed. It seems like the system's, it's been a little bit of a nuisance. It's alerting you to a motor that's got some issues. The alert gets closed. 2 weeks later, the motor fails. And then you realize culturally, we need to pay attention to these alerts because it has actually had a direct impact on our maintenance, on our operations. And that's something that you learn. These things start to really progress as you start to work with the software. So you also can't do this as a demo off to the side in an innovation room. It has to. We see the most success where it's part of a fully active process that's driving business outcomes.
And it was interesting actually. On a recent podcast, I interviewed our colleague Jordan in the delivery team, and he was saying, one of the challenges he had talking to customers is that they were actually sometimes, in some cases, too afraid to sort of point out that the system missed something or didn't do something quite correctly, thinking, we don't want to criticize the system too much. But he was saying, no, we need that kind of feedback so we can, make tweaks and improve it. So it's just, that's another part of it, that someone is paying attention to it, but they're actually too reluctant to provide that feedback in some cases. It's another way.
Well said. Yeah. And Jordan's expert in delivery, along with other members of the delivery team. And these are the type of things that we see and we can work together. So that's a really ongoing process to make sure, customers understand the benefit, like you say, of giving the feedback, making sure it's a collaboration between the maintenance engineers and the software itself. And it is self-learning in that sense. So it continues to get better based on what you fill it in with. So the more you put in, the more you get back out of it.
Exactly. So I know we're very short on time because we're back to back here, as I guess a lot of people listening will understand as well. So I'll just ask one more question, Tom, before you depart. And it's really just to summarise what we've talked about today. So someone looking to start a predictive maintenance project, don't quite know where to start or what to think about. What are the 3 things they need to think about?
The first one is, what do you want to start to achieve? I think the first point is, why would you install predictive maintenance? The second one is, are you keen to have us just to come and have a look? We'll help you. We're happy to try and have a look at things and effectively address some of the key issues. And then the third one is, how do you think long-term that's going to impact the business? So it can't really be done as a short-term thing. This needs to be done as I would always say, a 12-month pilot, 2-year pilot if possible, and really see how we can extrapolate that and see benefit and value. Where I've seen the most success is where we've got proactive customers, proactive IoT departments, digitalization, digital transformation teams that are fully integrated with the maintenance department, and it becomes like a cross-business collaboration to make things better. There's loads of companies I can think of off the top of my head that where this has been the case, and loads of case studies and other things that we've got to share. I mean, I'll point them in your direction after this, but this is really where we have to show. We've done this before. We've seen customers where they don't integrate and they don't engage properly, or they don't understand what's needed. We're here to answer those questions. We're here to make sure those teething problems can be solved. And I would say we see lots and lots of success. We've got customers scaling to 15,000, 20,000 assets across many, many countries around the world. I'd like to get more customers who have that same mindset. But it's already impressive in the last 12 months, especially, to see how that mindset is changing.
Absolutely. And what a nice positive way to finish as well, Tom. So that's all we've got time for today. But thank you so much for taking part and sharing your insights, Tom, as usual. Really, really good. And thank you everyone out there for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you very much.
Cheers, Noel. Cheers.
Please like and subscribe on all major podcast channels, and find out more about Senseye Predictive Maintenance at Siemens.com.